This is I'm from Denver, where the city stories come to life.
Amanda, I don't even know what title to give you, because you do know that if you Google yourself, you come up under so many different accounts. Like what titles describe a little bit all the things you've done and the titles you hold?
Yeah.
Where do you start?
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot, and it often depends who I'm speaking to. I think sometimes it can be overwhelming if I talk about the history of my career and what I've done. So
Where does it start? What's the first title that you got?
Is it lawyer? Is it philanthropy? What is it?
Yeah, so out of law school, I started as a lawyer for the Department of Commerce, so working with the Chief Counsel for Import Administration.
Okay. And that wasn't in Colorado, right?
It was in Washington, D.C.
Okay. And you graduated law school from
Temple Law School.
Temple Law School. Perfect. And so like when you were in law school, what was the main thing that you were really studying? Was it business law? Was it environmental law? What was
Wait, there's different kinds of law?
There's definitely lots of different kinds of law, man. There's like different doctors, man. There's a lot of different kinds of lawyers too.
Yeah, and law school is pretty general. I think people sometimes think you go to law school and you specialize, and some people do specialize and get a master's. I started a master's in transnational law, but I didn't complete it because I got a job right out of law school and there was no need to complete the master's program. But I did focus a lot on international law. So I did a law program in Japan and also one in Israel.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
But when you came out, you were doing more. Your job was focused on international law, correct? And business transactional, correct?
So international trade for the U.S. Department
So
of
what does
Commerce.
that mean?
Yeah. So often when people think of NAFTA panels or WTO or any trade between the U.S. and any other country, so that's the work of international trade. It's called anti-dumping and countervailing duty work.
And you did that right out of college?
Right out of law school.
Right out of law school. Okay, so how long's law school? How long are you in law school? I'm learning so much right now.
Yeah, law school's 3 years,
Okay.
but I worked at the Department of Commerce. I did an internship over the summer, and I did 2 international programs in law school, and then I got the job with the Department of Commerce upon graduating.
And how long did you do that?
A couple years, and then I went over to a law firm temporarily, and then I started as basically the clerk of the court at the International Trade Commission, which does both international trade and international intellectual property litigation. And I know it's a hard thing to say.
That's actually really fascinating because there's a lot that goes on with intellectual property trade, especially. I mean, I think the thing that's in the news the most is probably China, and their ability to hijack our patents and intellectual property. So I think that's actually a really big deal. So did you see any of that transpiring while you were there, or what was your main focus?
Sure. So when I was at the Department of Commerce, it's when China acceded to the WTO. So when I first came out of law school, there was all the movement of China wanting to have free trade. And when that opened up while I was at the Department of Commerce, we got multiple different countries, whether it was the president or the king, coming in to speak with the Secretary of Commerce, because they were saying, hey, like if you do this, our country will go away. All of our commerce is based on our ability to trade with the United States. And if you just open up trade completely with China, that's really going to be tough on our entire economy.
Sure. And so how do those whiteboard sessions go in meetings like that?
Yeah, those are pretty tough. They're usually with the Assistant Secretary of Commerce. As the General Counsel's office, we would be present for those conversations. But international trade is different than the work that I did in international IP litigation. And that was more on the IP side. That's more when a company is suing another company that both have patents in the United States.
Right.
They're saying you're infringing on my U.S. patent. And at the International Trade Commission, you do an exclusion order. So you would basically exclude that product from being imported into the United States and completely take over market share.
And were there a lot of women that you worked with at this time?
Great question.
Never.
Great question.
Never? You're the only one.
Trailblazer right here.
I think both the fields were about 98 to 99% male.
Wow. Was that, I won't say intimidating, but I mean, you as being like the 1%, you have to almost be on your A game at all time.
Yeah, I always say I worked probably 2 to 10 times harder than everyone else. You do.
Yeah.
So obviously, yeah, your adventures as a lawyer, incredible. But that really only tells a very small side
Yeah,
of what
that was only
do.
one Google search
Yeah,
result.
yeah.
There was like 20 more that came up.
Many more Google searches to go
Yeah.
through here.
Yeah, what did happen? What was that progression like? So you
Yeah.
did international law. Was there a transitional point after that you were like, hey, I want to do this next, or what kind of did that evolve into?
So when I went over to the International Trade Commission as the clerk of the court there, that was both international trade and international intellectual property litigation. I did that for a couple years, and then I got this job at one of the top law firms in the world doing international IP litigation.
Wow.
And that was probably 99% men, because when you think of patent infringement, you usually have a double PhD JD. I mean, these are people who are really super duper smart. Not that women
Well,
are
and super
not.
duper focused on
Focused.
just specific
Yes,
portions of the law.
very
Right?
specific.
Yeah, building themselves out at $1,000 an hour. Yeah.
Or more. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I was at the Finnegan Henderson for 2 years, and then I was in a major car accident, and that changed my life completely.
Wow, what happened?
I was with my father, and we were just leaving day
If
after
it's okay,
Thanksgiving.
we don't mean
Yeah,
We should
yeah.
edit all that out.
Yeah. So my dad ended up hitting a wall going 80 miles an hour.
Oh my God.
He was okay. The car was totaled. I had a traumatic brain injury. I thought my life was over. Obviously, being at one of the top law firms in the world doing international IP litigation, I was very scared. But it was a game changer. That was probably the best thing that happened to me in my life. In
Why?
hindsight.
What caused that, or what was the game changer?
Well, at the time, I was dealing with sexual harassment, was working 100 hours a week at my law firm. I was pretty miserable. I was younger than the next of counsel by 20 years. I probably, again, didn't have a life outside of work, and I never would have left. And I think with the car accident, it was, you think you're going 80 miles an hour in life, but this was literally into a wall, which just had to hit stop. And that stop moment was a moment of, hey, like, I'm never going to work for anyone else. I'm never going to be miserable. I'm always going to live a life of abundance. And when you think you're in abundance, when you're in a big law firm and really
You're in that bubble.
you're in a bubble, you
Yeah.
have the golden handcuffs, we like to say. And I really had them, and I'd worked so hard to get there, to be 20 years younger than the next of counsel at my law firm, to suddenly be dealing with everything I was dealing with. You just don't walk away. I would have gone to another law firm and worked just as hard at another law firm. But, at 30, whatever I was at the time.
We'll say 32.
Oh, you were still 32.
Yeah.
So
Something
this
like that.
So this
yeah.
all
Last
just
year.
happened
Last
last
year.
year.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just decided to leave, and it was as easy as that, or was it you knew what you wanted to do? Like,
Oh no. At the time it was devastating. I took disability and I did cognitive rehab, and with the top cognitive rehab location in the world in Bel Air, LA. I moved out from DC and started going to this cognitive rehab program. And then after that, I was like, I can't do it. I was in California. I'm from California. I was like, this is beautiful weather. I've been living so miserably for so long and so focused on my career that I just kind of lost track. And at that point, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then I ended up starting my own law firm and working with individuals with multi-jurisdictional assets, because I had this background at a high level at big law firms working with Fortune 100s. I'd worked in the federal government. I had already had so much exposure to so much international law that working with individuals that are CEOs of those companies is where I kind of moved into next.
wow.
But you had kind of the opportunity to take clients on at your own pace at that point,
Exactly.
right? So it's like, if you decided you were going to overwork, it was going to be
That's right.
you doing it,
Yeah.
you making the choice, not just
Yeah.
some client landed on your desk.
Yes.
You got to decide if they qualified to be in your law firm versus
That's
just something
exactly
coming across your desk that you had to do. That's great.
And it does change things when you're a general counsel. You hire other law firms. You manage the case from soup to nuts. It's
Maybe
your
explain to our
client.
audience the difference between a lawyer and a general
me.
counsel, because yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
Just tell me.
tell Jared. Well, I mean, because like, I know you and I know the difference between that, but I don't know if all of our viewers would know the difference between what a lawyer is and what a general counsel does. Because I think
Yeah.
you were just getting ready to say it there.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I really want to make sure that that's distinct and people people
Yes, for
understand
the
that.
audience, for you guys that don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Jared.
Yeah. So I think, general counsel is a lawyer, but general counsels are more generalists. So, if you are a specialist in international IP litigation, you're going to know everything about that type of litigation. That's
Sure.
all you do. As a general counsel, I manage the landscape of legal issues for my clients, from everything from hiring lawyers to deciding on what matters we're going to pursue, proactive defensive litigation, anything that needs to happen for my clients on the legal side. It's kind of just having a concierge as a lawyer.
Sure. You're like the general contractor of any legal issues
right.
happening within your client's life, right?
Exactly.
And their businesses. So yeah, if there's a litigation pending, you're going to be the one that interviews and hires the litigator.
Yes.
If there's certain contractual things that need to get done, either you're going to look at them or you're going to hire a contract lawyer to look at those kind of things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so how long did you do that? Like, did you feel comfortable at that point? You're like, hey, I wanted to make a shift. You made the shift. Did you feel good about it? And how long did you do that for?
It's interesting to think because at the time you think it's so hard to become a general counsel because you have to know so many things, but really it takes a lot of the stress off of you because if you're someone who knows how to multitask and to bring it back to my car accident, the cognitive rehab I did, I became a master multitasker. Like
Nice.
I can
Wow.
do.
So you bounced back stronger.
I did. It was like suddenly I could see things in a different way and manage multiple things in a way that I couldn't do
That's
before.
awesome.
And
Like
it
Christopher
was.
Walken in the Dead Zone.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
like, all
yeah.
of a sudden you wake up with superpowers.
It was a superpower. And it was one that I don't think that I even had. But it takes the pressure off when you become a general counsel because you don't have to be au fait in every area of law. You're hiring external lawyers who are. You can learn from those external lawyers. You have the opportunity to learn so many different areas of law. I love being a general counsel. So to answer your question, I've been doing that. I think I opened my law firm in 2012 and I still have my own firm.
Oh, in Colorado, though?
Yes.
Okay, so at
Yes.
what point, because you said you were from California. Sorry, not everyone's hashtag. I'm
California
from
to
Denver.
DC, back to California.
yeah.
Yes.
But that's only a very small
This
part.
is the
small.
first
Yeah.
page. The second page of
Yes.
the Google search results. When did you
Yeah.
come to Colorado and what was the reason behind that?
So I was at the time living between Park City, Utah, and Cartagena, Colombia, where I have a hotel project as working on a development project as a general counsel with a client. And back and forth probably 3 to 4 months a year through Cartagena and Deer Valley, Utah. And I was visiting my parents down who lived in Erie, Colorado, and my stepfather had a church in Aurora and was looking at what to do with a kind of dying congregation where a congregation is in their 80s and 90s. There's no kind of life of the youth, of marriages, of newborns and all the things that happen in a cycle of a church. So everyone in this congregation that my stepfather was the pastor of was in their 80s and 90s, and they no longer could afford just kind of basic operating costs.
Yeah.
And at the time I said, why don't we look at whether the congregation owns this land? And if they do, then if they'll donate it, I'm a developer and a lawyer, I'll come and help you start a nonprofit here because my stepfather's half Mexican and he has
Which
always...
is where we're sitting right now? Is that where we're
that's
sitting
where
right
we're
now?
sitting right
Oh,
now.
okay. So,
Yeah.
Wow,
but
okay.
continue. Yeah, continue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this location, he was the pastor for 6 years and really had a hard time proselytizing because we're in Northwest Aurora and the demographics had drastically changed from a mostly kind of middle class white demographic who were Lutheran to where 80% of the refugees in the state were relocated. And when I was visiting, I said, why don't you just open a space that really opens up externally to the community that's here? He was a Catholic monk for 10 years and was a Lutheran minister, but really he's a theologian and just wants to serve people.
Yeah.
And we made a proposal to the congregation and they voted unanimously to donate the church and 4 lots of land. And then we started this nonprofit called Village Exchange Center.
And so, and like to Jake's point, that's where we're at now. So
Yes.
talk a little bit about the history of what happened after the formation of this place.
Yeah, so it was very quick. So I thought I'd come for 1 year. Given
Yeah, you're just helping out. Yeah.
I'd start it and then I'd leave. And yeah, it's a joke now, 7 years later. But it
Colorado
really,
does that to people.
it does.
Yeah.
It really does. And it was just,
Well, and you've jumped right in with the community and done we'll get to all that, but yeah, you're definitely a welcome addition to the community.
thank you.
Yeah.
So year one, what happened? How did
Yeah.
what transpired there?
Yeah, so we ended up getting the donation. I got the 501c3 status expedited, and we opened the Village Exchange Center, which has the mission of celebrating religious and cultural diversity. Within our second year, we were already at 500,000 in a budget. In our third year, we hit 13.6 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is
That's a
that?
budget right there.
What does that do, and what does that mean to get that budget? Like,
Yeah.
again, it's for the audience out there that doesn't know, and me. But
Yeah.
but like, so what
Yeah.
happens with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm giving you the financial numbers, but really that represents impact. That's impact with thousands, tens of thousands of people. And the third year of inception was 2020, and we determined to stay open because we are a community center here and we have the ability to build trust, and we had built trust in
During
community.
COVID, you mean?
During COVID.
Yeah. Okay.
So in 2020, we decided to stay open, to do a food pantry, which scaled up to 5,000 people we were serving per week. We opened a farm at Stanley Marketplace. We became the governor's pop-up and then stand-up vaccine equity clinic, and then did a multitude of different programs to serve this community. And the big one we did was the Left Behind Workers Fund. And the Left Behind Workers Fund is a fund that provided $1,500 to undocumented immigrants who lost their job due to COVID, but were unable to obtain CARES money or any federal assistance.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, it's impressive because I've known you for a couple of years now. I've been over to the Stanley Marketplace. I've seen everything that you do with the gardening and the education and everything over there, which is phenomenal. I have never walked into this building before, and I did not realize how real it is.
Yeah.
You walk in here, and you really get a sense of like, wow, this is a community center. They are taking care of people that really need it. Like there's food drive things happening. I can see families applying for help out there, literally right out that door, right there. I did not realize that it was like, I mean, and there's a lot of people standing outside right now.
Yeah.
So I was really almost taken aback by how many people, and I was just thinking, walking around while we were setting up, how many people you have affected positively over the last 7 years, well,
Yeah.
6 years now that you've been doing this, right?
7.
This particular project, 7 years?
Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, with a budget like $13 million, with everything you're doing, I mean, the lives that you have changed
Yeah.
doing that. So yeah, when I say welcome edition, ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
welcome edition. But
Thank you.
recently, though, you also were featured in a very successful documentary, and the whole project, correct?
Yes.
For this project here.
uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
And it went to the Cannes Film Festival.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that and what all that is?
So the third page of the Google results
Yeah,
is
yeah.
you're an actress. Is that it?
No, not an actress, but I am a filmmaker.
Okay.
So I was the producer and the executive producer, co-producer and co-executive producer of a movie called My Father's House. So in year 2, I realized very quickly, because what we did was so different. Like normally when churches close, they do what's called holy closure. So the church closes and they donate the church back to the bishop or the synod or whatever the larger institution is. In this case, we did something different. We actually had the congregation who owned the land donate.
And converted it
And
to a
converted
different
it
cause.
in a different cause. And that was very different. And what we learned is that 6,000 to 10,000 churches close annually in the United States.
Oh wow.
And
Wow, that's a big number.
it's a big number. And
Go to church, people. Come on now.
or synagogue or
Anything,
wherever, mosque,
wherever you need to
whatever.
go.
you go.
Wherever you go,
Wherever
just go.
you go.
Just go.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Or go to a community center.
Yeah.
We build community.
Yeah.
So I think that was the idea, is how do you create community? And when there's a loss in people going and exercising their rights against religion.
Sure.
And our film, because I had lived in Park City and I've been going to the Cannes Film Festival for years, I was like, why don't we consider filming this? Because it's very different. And we started filming in 2018. So our second year we started
You really
filming.
are good at multitasking. I'm just saying.
Yes. Yeah,
But
thank you.
continue.
Well,
Sorry.
at this
yeah,
point,
yeah.
you're
Yeah.
balancing your own law firm,
Yeah.
this organization,
And a movie.
and building a movie producer career.
But yeah, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we really were like, this is a great story, and we started filming. Ultimately, the film ended up at the Cannes Film Festival and won at the American Pavilion, like Best
Wow.
Emerging Filmmaker, and has been, I think, in 11 different film festivals.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Can people stream it, or how does that even?
Not yet.
When it's at Cannes Film Festival, it's a totally different process, right?
To get into festivals is a whole process of itself, in and of itself. But when you're concluded with that, then you decide, do you want it to go live publicly? Do you want to sell it to PBS? Like, so that's where we're at now, is what to do with the film now that it's completed. But for us, it's really an opportunity. When you think about community members and donors and stakeholders, I will send the film, and it gives a really a great kind of
Education,
overview
yeah.
of who we are and what the heart is of who we are.
Would it not just be about who you guys are, but it also can show
That's right.
others what they can do themselves, right? I mean,
Yes.
It is a phenomenal film.
Thank you.
Which leads, I think, to another of your philanthropic endeavors, which is you sit on a very special board, a couple of boards, and I know
Yes.
we'll get to some of the other ones, but I think a very easy lead in right there is, what is your relationship to the Denver Film Festival, and how has that all come around?
Sure.
Yeah.
So our first screening of the film was at Denver Film Festival, and I started going to the Denver Film programs, and then I was asked to be on the board a couple years ago, and then I became vice chair last year, and I'm currently the chair of Denver Film.
Oh, I love that. I went to see you for film study, so I just so that part I do understand, right?
Yes.
The whole lawyer stuff
Yes.
it's over
Yeah.
my head, but so it's amazing that you're able to even get into that space. I mean, did you know and have experience in the film industry to know how to make this documentary at all?
I did not.
Where-
I also never did a nonprofit in my life, ever, nothing.
So
Yeah.
all right, so talk to me about how you even learned to do something like
Amanda figures shit out.
It's the same concept. I figured it out.
Shit done.
That's my question,
Yes.
though. Is that basically what it is?
Yeah.
Are you just? I mean, you don't go to law school and do all the things that you've done and study across the world without being able to be well educated. But when you take something like that on, do you just undergo this? Like, all right, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to do this. Like, how?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, I think thank you, Jake. I think this is a nice kind of who I am is figuring things out. You know, whether or not I'm the
You
general
said figure
counsel.
shit out, but
Yeah, I figure shit out, and that's
Which
really
is awesome.
like,
Hey, ain't
yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
But even like in my role,
So many
as-
people don't figure it out.
They
so-
don't. They don't, exactly.
Yeah.
And as a lawyer, I often say I do crisis management as well, because often when you're dealing with litigation, someone's in crisis somewhere. And I've dealt with some big litigation, an extradition order out of Colombia, cases that you wouldn't even be able to make up if you tried. And so when you've learned how to deal with crisis and walk through kind of difficult doors that no one else has walked through, you figure things out. So for me, you know, I found a filmmaker and we just started producing. I found some money for it and really got into, okay, this is really special.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, and this is what we're doing. And an emerging filmmaker, so it wasn't as expensive as had I hired someone that had been around for a lot longer. And he's amazing, Rob Shearer. We love him. He did a wonderful job with our film. But again, like I think it all comes down to saying, this is something I'm passionate about. When you're passionate about, when you're passionate about something, it's not stressful. It's something that you love and
You
that
love
you
to
want
do.
to do.
You want to wake up and do it.
That's
You
right.
talked about handling crisis well, and obviously without going too much into the politics side, because we're all divided, it seems anymore.
Yeah.
That is a good kind of like word to describe kind of what you're doing with the refugees. I mean, it's so easy for people just to turn a blind eye or have frustration towards it, but they're still here. They're still in need of help. Can you talk about what this organization and what you're able to do to actually give back and help the refugees? We talked about the budget and all that, but there's actually a system that you've learned to put in place and help them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good question. I think politics, when you're helping and doing humanitarian efforts, politics shouldn't be a part of it. And I have really created friendships across all party lines. And personally, I'm a libertarian, and I've always just kind of been right in the middle. And I've really created relationships with all sides. Whatever I personally believe around different political agendas, I just don't bring them up, because as a nonprofit leader, I want to be able to make everyone feel included and not alienate any of our stakeholders. So when I say stakeholders, that's everyone from different donors, from different parties, from when we have most of our money comes from municipalities. We're in Aurora, who has our mayor has very different ideas than the Denver mayor. And I want
And
to
you're almost on that border, right?
and we're
Is it-
3 blocks away from Denver.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we're on the border of Arapahoe and Adams County. So we really are in this border town. So I'm very close to all the commissioners and city council members in Aurora and Adams and Arapahoe County. And I know the mayors, and I try to do everything I can to support people who are already here. Now, how they got here, where they're going, I don't get involved in that. Like right now, we have up to 4,000 people we're serving a week. Both through our food pantry, we have a large grant from the state of Colorado, the Office of New Americans, to provide housing support for people who are here and have chosen to stay and are going through a legal process to be citizens. So we're always looking at how we can support the human beings that are in front of our doors.
Yeah. And so, sorry, Jake. What were you gonna say?
Oh, no, go ahead.
So I see it. So one of our clients is on Havana, and I live on Havana, so I'll drive up and down the street. So I do see individuals lined up. Is that kind of, they're waiting for the food pantry? It's an array of things. Like
Yes.
how does that work?
So we do case management wraparound services, which is one of the core areas that we work on. We also have a food pantry that's serving about 850 families per week. So that may be the lines that you're seeing on Wednesdays. Today we have community leaders picking up for their community's food. So you'll see some groups come in to take bags. On Tuesdays.
So you distribute out as well, so
Yes.
other people. Oh, wow.
So we want to support our other pastors and leaders of other organizations. So we'll give them bags. They tell us what they want. We do culturally appropriate shopping for them. They come get their bags. They don't even have to say it comes from Village Exchange Center. We just want to support other organizations supporting their communities.
Terrific.
Amazing.
So I know, and then within the Village Exchange Center, it's not just a food pantry though.
Yeah.
You're actually educating folks on especially at the Stanley Marketplace with the gardening skills, the vertical farming skills, hydroponic cultivation techniques. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Is that the gardens?
That's
okay,
at the gardens.
okay,
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what that is, please?
So our village farm at Stanley has 25 50-foot farm beds. It's a urban immersion program that's funded by the USDA NIFA program and the Office of Refugee Resettlements from the federal side, not from the state side. That provides a programming that's 6 months to 7 to 10 refugees and immigrants who go through a program. It's earn as you learn. They're learning everything from seedlings all the way through sales.
Phenomenal. I mean, that's just such good vocation.
It is. Yeah.
So there's the actual gardens but then there's hydroponic as
Not
well. Okay, you guys are getting ready to go into hydroponic, correct?
We would like to if we can get the funding for it.
Yeah.
So we just got
Either way,
Yes.
fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, what
Yeah.
a great. I mean,
Yes.
we've had many conversations. You know what I used to do for a living. If I had that vocation before I went into that, I could have cut 5 years off my learning curve, which was, those 5 years are difficult. So that is, I mean, what a cool vocation to give, especially to the younger kids. Which also brings us to there is another project you're working on currently with the governor's office, correct? You don't tell, can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jake, not just one, bro.
Yeah,
Come
yeah,
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Multitask.
So we have a couple programs through the state. One is through CDPHE. We have 3 programs through CDPHE, which are for the vaccine equity and wraparound services, a health disparities grant. For our cultural navigators to work with individuals to get all kinds of different access and referrals to different health resources. In addition, we have a program right now that I mentioned earlier called for our housing and case management for our new immigrants. We are housing about 200 families, which could ultimately be about 500 to 600 people who've arrived, and we're providing this case management for them. So everything from them getting a bank account to learning financial literacy to be able to pay their apartment expenses.
What about getting like work visas and things of that nature?
So there's something called TPS, which is a temporary protective status. So I think the state has now done about 1,000 TPS intakes, which is to get people work visas. Of the many organizations working on this, if 1,000 have been done, we've done about 520 of them.
Do you find that a lot of these folks are coming with prerequisite skill sets already? Like maybe they were a doctor or a lawyer in the country that they came from, but those credentials don't exactly carry over.
Yes.
And so, can you speak a little bit to that? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of really overqualified folks that are coming here
Yes.
that aren't able to actually practice the things that they went to school for in their own countries.
Yeah, and there's some wonderful programs. The City of Denver has just put together a Work Ready program that was announced by the mayor last week that we're working with them on as well. But looking at how you actually do credentialing for people who have a skill set that doesn't actually easily transfer, but they can do a skills-based resume, take tests to get credentials so that they can actually go into other work.
I think that it's so easy, I think, for people just to generalize a problem and just be like, oh, they're here and they're not working. And it's like, you see the opposite of that, right? Like and so, but then you're also giving them the tools and the resources that they need, because they're not just coming here looking for a handout. They want to go to Stanley Marketplace and learn how to do all these skills. And they want to be a part of the society and community. Do you see that?
Absolutely. And I always say that any refugee or immigrant that's here, and all of our ancestors, all of ours, all came with the same dream in mind. And when you have immigration laws that need to be reformed, this has become a wedge issue across the board. But I think everyone can agree, if people come here and they provide and add to society and they want to work, like, they are added benefit and really enhance everyone's lives.
Obviously, I mean, this country was built as the melting pot, and I think some of the greatest ideas that have changed American culture, changed our technology, have come from immigrants, right? I mean, you could go back to Albert Einstein. I mean, it's the transformative things that we get rid of if we're not helping immigration along.
People forget that. It's just easy to generalize in the moment, and I think social media doesn't help anything with that.
It definitely doesn't, man. But organizations like this and things that you're doing are so monumental to our state and also to the national culture and the national conversation. And that's why we want to really make sure and highlight these kind of things, because this is important.
Even though you're from California, not hashtag I'm from Denver.
It's true.
Hey, she's been here for 7 years and she's been doing a whole lot. I would challenge anity from Colorado
who's from
to
here,
do what she's doing, okay?
Can't multitask. What happens when we Google search you? Nothing. That's great. So what's the ultimate goal now? Like, what's the vision? You have all these things. Do you plan that far ahead, or do you just kind of handle what's in front of you, or do you have a ultimate goal?
Yeah, so we're working on something called the Community Relief Fund that we're trying to get funds from congressionally directed spending. We're also working right now on an application to FEMA, also one with the state. But really, a community relief fund is setting up a permanent community infrastructure amongst multiple nonprofits so that when there's a disruption or an emergency, there's an infrastructure already in place to get programs.
So another COVID happens.
Exactly. Now you've got the infrastructure already there, the technology, the cultural brokers, which are our navigators, our promotores, our social workers, already set up. So when any need from a municipality or a stakeholder to get to historically marginalized communities, it's already there. So we've been working on this for about 1.5 years.
That's fantastic, because I think what COVID did was exacerbated other problems that were lurking in the cracks, right?
This is one of them.
Right. And so it's like, just from having, medical care and being able to get a face mask, during the pandemic to getting access to food, families that were completely cut off.
People losing their jobs.
So the fact that SOP and that infrastructure is now built up, I mean, that is I mean, that's special because they will turn to you
Yes.
in that time of crisis. Yeah.
That's right. And we found we pivoted so many times what you're saying, like, is it just what's in front of you? Well, the pivot is let's set up an infrastructure so that when there's change, and there's always going to be need in historically marginalized communities.
Yeah.
Always. And even not in the larger communities, like whenever there's a need, everyone had needs during COVID. And what infrastructure is in place other than municipalities to get out programs and services to individuals?
Right.
And the municipalities can only do so much. And I am a strong believer in both the private sector and your corporations taking the onus as well. I don't believe that the government should be doing everything for everyone. I think individuals can do it. I think corporations can take some on, like finding other ways to set up infrastructures, including nonprofits. So it's not just municipalities doing it. And that's where I think a disconnect happens. You often get taxpayers who are upset because someone else is deciding what to do with their money.
Yeah.
But if there was a way that the infrastructure was set up so that if you're an individual and you want to donate to a specific cause, or you're a corporation who wants to donate into a specific cause, it's very hard to do that. It's surprisingly more difficult
To
get
find
money out.
reputable
Yes.
501c3s
That's
like
right.
this that are worthy of actually funding, that where the funding is going to the people that really need it.
That's right. And what if we can set that up and then we can help, we can be that conduit to all the other nonprofits that can
that's
help get the
amazing.
money out
Yeah.
and the services out.
What a great concept
Yeah.
from the multitasker, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to tackle that one as well. Like,
But
I love
she's
that.
almost multitasking and then having people multitask for her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a little bit of
But
that.
to both of your points, it's to know who to donate your money to, or your time, or organizations. I think that's why Jake and I really wanted to do this podcast and have you on, is because how many times do I go to the Stanley Marketplace and I see the plants growing or the facility there?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a clue what's going on with that.
There's so much more to it than
there's
just
a
that.
story
Yeah.
behind that that
That's
is actively helping people within the community, and it's just amazing what you've done. I mean, it's
you.
terrible that you got in that car accident and you went through everything you went through,
Yes.
but you almost needed to have that happen, as you said.
She's like an X-Men.
Yes.
She's like came out with superpowers, man. It's like
I
what's
love
your
that. Yes.
superpower?
Yeah.
Yo, I got
Yeah.
this planner down.
yeah.
We're gonna get some stuff done this month.
And I did want to add, because I didn't say it earlier, but half of the food we grow at the farm goes into our food pantry and is chosen by community members. So we've already been doing all of our meetings with community leaders to determine what we're growing.
All right, so let's say someone's hearing or watching this and they are in need themselves of those resources. How do they go about finding that? Because here's the thing, we've done things with Food Bank of the Rockies, and I know you've done that as well, and you guys partner with them.
Some of those bags sitting right out there right now.
Yes.
I think one of the most heart-wrenching parts of that is that people don't want to admit they need help, or they don't know where to turn for help, and they almost just, and that'll just make you depressed. That will just send you down this like spiral of despair. What are the resources and the way to contact you for help?
Yeah, and we try to put all of that online on villageexchangecenter.org. We also have ways to volunteer, but we really look at creating a safe, dignified space where people feel comfortable. So I think the basis of our success has been our ability to build community and make everyone feel safe. So even from we give cash assistance. It's very rare that we give giving a Walmart card is something, but it's still Walmart. Giving someone cash and dignifying their choice to do what they need to with that cash is very important.
That's
But
a really interesting point that you just said there.
Yeah.
I've never it's not just, it's like, here, you choose where you're going.
It's your life.
Yes.
We're not sending you to Walmart. We're
Yes.
sending you can go to Whole Foods if you want to. You can go
Yeah.
anywhere you want.
Yeah, and
Okay.
what we do is something, we use USIO cards, which are debit cards. It's a publicly traded company. These debit cards we're giving to an individual, and then then we load it with cash.
Okay.
So we have a low-wage worker fund where someone got COVID and they didn't have PTO or any time off. We're giving them $1,500 if they qualify under certain parameters. And right now we're administering $500,000 with Adams County with that. And this is our third time doing this program with Adams County, and we have money that we just finished with Arapahoe County to do the same thing. But that's a
terrific.
$1,500 card, and then they can go and use it. Hopefully,
That's
they
life-changing
quarantine.
money for these folks.
Yeah.
So they
It is.
really need it.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
But what I want to say, which is interesting, is when you have the people say, oh, they're just going to go buy liquor. Well, we with USIO can actually see where the money's spent.
Honestly, I was gonna ask that question. I didn't know
Yeah.
if you wanted me. If,
Yeah.
As I wouldn't. But I think that's important.
It's important.
Only because of people like that, right? And it's like, how many
Yes.
times have you seen somebody run to a liquor store with one of those?
Never.
Exactly.
And
But,
never, ever.
but on
Yes.
social media, you would think it's happening
Yeah,
every single
exactly,
day.
right?
Yeah.
And that's and that's just all the BS on social media and propaganda out there. It's like, no, these people are coming here because they need it. If you have made the conscious decision to walk into somewhere like this,
Yes.
and like Jared was saying, like kind of uncomfortably walk in, it's like it's because you need help.
Yes.
And you're not, your first knee jerk is not like, I'm gonna go to a liquor store. It's I need to eat.
I need
And
to
I need a
survive.
house. I need a
Yeah.
home. I need a
Yeah,
place
yeah.
to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
And so doing things in a dignified way, and like you see when you come here, there's no one stopping you when you come in. So people feel comfortable that they can walk in and they're welcome.
You're
Yeah.
humanizing them.
You're
I had
humanizing.
4 people walk up and greet us as we walked in today, and it was so cool.
Yeah.
I've known you for a while. Like
Yeah.
I said, this is the first time I've ever been to this spot. And I was really, it just made me super proud to be your friend.
Aw.
Like, it was very cool
Thank
to
you.
walk in and see all this happening.
They all thought you had her dog with you.
Yeah,
though. That's what
we
they're
walked
like.
into her office like, so are you the one that lets the Pomeranian out? And I was like, I'm sorry, man. I don't have Chloe with me.
Yeah. But I think it's really true. So what I was going to say is the data management around this. So with those USIO cards, we are able to see where people actually spend the money.
Yeah.
So
great.
even bringing it back to say, look, like 99% of the money is spent on like food and basic needs, and we can see that. So
Right.
we really have a way of knowing, like we want to dignify people. When you come in, we just started a program where we're feeding fresh meals. So when people get a vaccine, they're getting a $100 gift card, plus they have a fresh meal and they can sit and talk and build community.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so I haven't got a full tour, but like what is inside the facility? Like I know when you walked in, you could see kind of it's so open space, and I've seen
Yes.
some things in there. But describe kind of what happens here.
Yeah, because it was a church and now is a community center. So today we have the bags being picked up by community leaders. So the food pantry is also happening. Yesterday it was a full marketplace. So you walk around and choose the food that you want. Also downstairs this morning, if you were here earlier, we had a vaccine clinic. Also food being cooked and provided to people who go through the clinic. And then all throughout the building, you'll see cultural navigators doing case management for individuals. Also on weekends, we have 4 congregations, an African-American, Congolese, Bhutanese, Nepali, and Kachin groups that worship here. We also hold space for Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist prayers and services that they want to do here. So the multi-faith component, we want people to feel like this is a place for everybody.
You guys hear that? And everything is going good.
Yes.
Like nobody, there's
Yeah.
there's no animosity walking in this place. It is
not.
really a special place. I mean,
Yes.
It's amazing, like, and it's so funny because, like Jake said, you guys are friends. So when we hang out in a social setting, we'll talk, you and I, and I'm always like drinking wine with you, and then I just shut up, and I'm like, what? and then what do you do?
Yeah.
All right, then what?
then-
You have so many
Yeah.
tales, but it's amazing what you're doing. I think it's great that Jake is bringing people on the podcast for us that are making a true difference in the lives of
Thank you.
people. And I think that you're very selfless because I didn't know this about you, right? There are all the oohs and the ahs that I have from our conversations. I didn't know what you're doing here, and it really is amazing what you're doing. And so whether you get the kudos from the mayor, the governor, or whoever, you deserve
you.
them. And
Thank you.
we're grateful that you came on to share your story because it should be shared.
it
Thank
definitely
you.
needs to be shared.
And I wanted to also add that we have youth programs. So we have a whole Youth Natural Leaders program of kids that come, that we have an outdoor equity grant with with the governor's office. And that outdoor equity grant allows us to take our kids up to do all kinds of cool Colorado things. So that's another program. And it's also a leadership program that lasts about 6 months.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for coming on and talking to us and just kind of spreading your message. When you make your sequel, are you going to come back on to promote it, or like are you going to make another movie?
We definitely want to.
Yes.
Yeah, we definitely want to do that
Yes.
interview. We definitely want to do that interview.
And I am working on my next series, and I've already done my proof of concept and working on it.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Love it.
Keep you posted on that. And thank you for having me and highlighting the Village Exchange Center.
Yeah,
the work
we're
we've
happy
done.
to.
Without a doubt. I'm from Denver.com. You can get more information, and just if you need the resources, we have everything you need right there on the website. Thank you, Amanda. You're amazing.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
like
you
gonna
both.
choke up, man. I'm
I
like,
know, it's pretty awesome. What a
Thank
great story.
you.
That's a wrap from the Mile High Storytellers. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe.
#I'm from Denver.